Okay, today we're going to look at the next poem by, excuse me, Robert Burns, which is going to be a poet's welcome to his love-begotten daughter. And this poem essentially continues the themes that we sort of touched on the last time about ideas relating to sort of like religion or like shame or like judgment from other people, sort of Puritanism, that kind of thing, touching on the ideas of enlightenment and people's morality or ethics and so on, sort of shifting from uh traditional kind of ethics. I don't want to say traditional, but you could say maybe I don't say traditional because it's a bit basically if you say something is traditional, it's assuming that that thing is uh that tradition is just one thing. In other words, that like if you look at the past of any kind of say you're looking at the past of like a culture or a faith or something, if you say this is the tradition, you're essentially saying that this was the way that everyone saw things and there's no disparity between them, which is obviously not the case in any kind of culture, in any kind of faith or you know place in the world, culture in the world. There's always multiple different ways that people have lived their lives and thought about things. Um, so in any case, it's sort of like you could say the old way or the Puritan way of looking at things is going to be sort of challenged in this poem. So it's another poem which is similar to the one with Holy Willie's prayer, which I posted yesterday. Which is sort of so this poem's looking at the same kind of thing. It's looking at excuse me, it's questioning the sort of ethics or the sort of um culture around relationships, intimacy, marriage, and all that. Yes, it's basically questioning a lot of these sort of concepts and sort of how they are lived at the time. Huh? Okay, so essentially the poem is about how the speaker has had a daughter out of marriage, out of wedlock, which for a very long time, in other words, the speaker and the woman he had the kid with were not married when he had the kid, which to us it might seem like that's nothing. Like in the modern day, that happens, all the time. But classically speaking, or let's just say historically speaking, the normal way that people would have children would be, excuse me, that they would get married, and then after they get married, then they would have kids. It was like you'd have to get married in order to have children. That was kind of like the prerequisite. It was like marriage was a must, and then you can have children, and then the children would be looked at as being sort of like pure or sort of like proper or something like that. And children who were born outside of marriage were seen as sort of like dirty in some way, were seen as impure in some kind of way. They were looked down on, and they were not seen as the same to many people. They were not seen in the same way as children of marriage. And obviously, in our culture, that's like completely, generally speaking, that's like completely gone away. It's completely flipped and left. Um, and so most people today, a kid is a kid, and there's inherent value in a child, whether they come from a married family or not a married family, whatever. Okay, but at this time, when this poem was written, it's still very much the case that there's a lot of shame around um, having a child outside of marriage, and there's a lot of shame attached to that child and to the parents of that child. So basically, the speaker in this poem is going to sort of challenge that and criticize those ideas, and at the same time demonstrate the amount of love that he has for his child, his daughter in this case. Okay, so the poem begins, Thou's welcome, you're welcome, Wayne, mean child, Hunter for me, mishaps, misfortune, bad luck for me, if thoughts of you, if thoughts of thee, or yet thy mammy, shall ever daunt in me or awe me, my sweet wee lady, or if I blush when thou shalt call me Taita or Daddy, basically saying, uh, if thoughts of you or your mom ever ever make me embarrassed or ever make me ashamed if I don't claim you as mine, or I don't claim your mum as being, my woman, if you like, then or if when you're born you start to address me as your father, as your dad, um, then he says Miss Hunter for me, meaning bad luck on my head. So basically, he's saying like what he's saying is, um, the right thing to do is to claim you and to say that you're my daughter and to be proud of you and to not try and hide from you, not try and hide you from the people, or not try and pretend that you're not mine, or that your mother is not my is not my girl, even though she's not my wife, she's not my significant other, basically. So he's saying basically that he's gonna be open and he's gonna be proud of the fact that he's had this child, and that so from the get-go he's obviously challenging the idea of shame around children that are born out of marriages that are not born inside a marriage. He's challenging it because he's saying that not only will I not be ashamed, but if I am ashamed and if I feel shame, then I wish something bad will happen to me because of that. So he's gonna basically do his best to be proud and to talk openly about how this is his kid, and the woman who is the mother of the child is in fact the woman that he has had the child with. That he's not gonna try and hide anything. Okay, though now they call me fornicator, which is a reference to biblical sin, or classic religious sin. The idea of sleeping with someone outside of marriage is called fornication, um, classically seen as a sin, as a crime. A better way to think about sin is to think about it in terms of being a crime, because at some points in time, sin and crime were essentially the same. They were the same. You could be punished for committing a sin. So it's not just something like a moral, ethical issue, but it's something which in the past did have serious consequences, and still to this day in different parts of the world where there is a strong religious influence on the laws, um, you can still be punished for um, committing what the ruling authorities, and this is important again, if you go back and watch the lecture on Holy Wally's prayer, there's always a human element which is turning itself into God essentially, and which is basically the one that is dictating what is sinful and what is not sinful, who's chosen, who's not chosen, who's on the right path and who's not. So still to this day in many parts of the world, if you do actions which the ruling authorities deem as sinful, they still will uh, punish you as if you were a criminal, if you committed some kind of crime. Um, Even though, despite the fact that they themselves will often commit all of these same things in their own private lives. Okay, anyway, but that's a topic for another day. Anyway, so he goes on to say they call me fornicator, so people around him are shaming him for what he's done. They're calling him out for what he's done, and they're calling him names which it's the equivalent. You could think about this fornicator in many different communities. The equivalent of fornicator would be something like liar or thief, something like that for a man. And for a woman, fornicator would be the equivalent of like pedophile or pedophile. It's not like a small thing, but it's like a big thing in certain communities. So it's like a big thing that this word is like a big thing, huh? Yeah, bear in mind that in some cultures, in some places, being not a fornicator, but being a fornicator could have you physically punished. In other words, you could be beaten in some ways. And if you were to, say, cheat in marriage, you could be killed. Your life could literally be taken. So keep that in mind, that it's not like something small that he's going against. He's challenging his culture. And be careful. He's challenging the sort of many of the or some of the people in power in his culture, the religious figures in power in his culture who are pushing these ideas. Now you can say for the average person, just as always with the average person, they themselves are probably recognizing that, look, it's just a normal human thing. We all have, do different things at different times. And even the priest, he's or the pastor, wherever, they're doing different things to you. We're all just human, and so they're not necessarily the ones who are pushing this. He's more so challenging the people in positions of power, who are pushing these ideas and then sort of influencing other people to do that also, which we're gonna see in sort of coming lines of poetry. Okay, so he goes on to say, and tease my name in contra clatter, meaning in country gossips. People are talking about him. The more they talk, I'm known the better. Even let them clash, meaning let them keep talking. An old wife's tongue is a feckless matter. It's something which is useless. It's something weak. To gie and fash to talk or to to be annoyed at. So basically saying like people are gonna talk about me. I recognize that they're gonna talk about me, and but it's not enough to make me sort of stop thinking the way I'm thinking, and I'm not gonna pay attention to these people that are making fun of me, that are calling me names and so on. They can talk all they want. It's not gonna change my mind about you. He's the poem. Remember, the speaker is addressing his daughter directly, so he's writing this poem out of his love for her, which is very sweet. So he's saying, I don't care about these other people, what they think. I'm still gonna love you and all that, the way that I should. Okay, so he goes on to say, welcome, my bonny, sweet daughter. So the last verse also began with a welcome, and he's saying welcome again. He's repeating himself in this verse, in this line, um, to just emphasize that he is very happy with his daughter being here, that she's born. He's very happy with it, and he's not ashamed of her at all. He's not embarrassed about it. In fact, he's the opposite. He's very happy for her being there. Okay, my bonny, sweet daughter, my beautiful, sweet daughter. We just means small daughter. Uh, though you come here a little bit unsought for, meaning like I didn't plan or didn't think that you were gonna be born, because obviously they weren't married or whatever. So yeah, and though you're coming, I have fought for both Kirk, meaning church, and choir. So basically, I've been arguing with the church and the choir, the people who are, like I said before, the priests and the um the religious leaders in the community. I've been arguing with them because they're saying shame. They're making accusations against me. They're trying to call me shameful. They're trying to call you shameful and all that. And perhaps also, and though you're coming out fought for, maybe I'm not exactly clear in terms of if abortion was a thing, back when this was written in the 1700s, if people were even able to do it, I don't know. But we could, if that was a thing, we could also assume that at the very least, the church and the choir, what he's talking about, or some people in his community were saying that I hope that your daughter is not born. I hope that she's not born now because she's like an abomination. She's something evil, wrong. So he's saying like I fought with them, and I fought with them in terms of like hoping that you would be born and you would sort of that I'm proud of you and all that. Okay, yet by my faith you're no unwrought for, meaning this word unwrought, it means something like crude or something like misshapen or something like not made in a correct way. So he's basically saying to her, you're not an abomination, you're not abnormal, you're not weird. Um, going against the idea that, children outside of marriage are like dirty in some kind of way or misshapen, abnormal in some kind of way. He's like fighting against that, criticizing that idea. Excuse me. He was gonna say that I shall swear. So basically, he everything he's saying here, he's just putting emphasis on it, and he's saying, uh, that I believe this 100%. Okay, I take an oath that this is true. Okay, small image of my beautiful Betty. I think that's her name, huh? Or it could just be, yeah, I think that's her name. Or it could just be another way of talking about his daughter being sort of beautiful. As fatherly, I kiss and dote thee, meaning hug or touch in a sort of like hold in a sort of like kiss and hold in a sort of kind, loving way, like a father would with his child. As dear and near my heart, I set thee, so you're very extremely close to me. You're in my heart. Way as good will. Now, there's two different meanings that I get from this. With as God will, or way as good will, meaning with as much good intentions as I can. So he's gonna love her and all that with as much sincerity and as good intentions as he can. The other is with as God wills. So he's asking God to help him to be loving and so on. As all the priests had seen me get thee, that's out of hell. So this line here, we could either there's a couple ways you can understand it too. One is that he's gonna love her as much as if he loved a daughter born inside of marriage, uh which would be taken to the church and given like the religious ceremony by the priests and all that. So the daughter had seen me get thee, meaning sorry, the priest had seen me get thee, meaning they blessed the daughter when she's born, like would happen if she was born in a marriage. So he's gonna love her the same. Um, the alternative is, the alternative is, as if the priest had watched me get you out of hell, meaning I love you so much that I would pull you out of hell. Now, the other thing with this that's out of hell could be also a reference to the fact that some people um, in his culture would have believed that the daughter herself, again, was an abomination, that she is sinful, she is evil, and she's like a child of hell, she's like child of the devil, or something like that, that she shouldn't be born. And if she is born, she shouldn't be treated the same as someone born from marriage. She's evil in some way, inherently evil in some way. Yeah, stupid idea. Okay, anyway, so it goes on to say, we're gonna say, sweet fruit, oh, mony a merry dint, my funny toil is no attent. Though thou came to the world, a sglint, which fools may scoff at in my last plaque, thy parts be in it, the better half of it. Okay, now, the translation of this, what I'm gonna do, okay, is I pre-translated this with AI just because I'll be honest with you, even though I'm from Scotland, I'm from Glasgow and that, this is ours, not to dox myself, but anyway, I'm from Glasgow, yeah, and even though I'm from here and this is my native tongue, whatever, but still a lot of these words, I'll be honest, I don't understand yet because we don't talk this way. So what I've done is I've pre-translated some of these lines, to try and help you. So this was the first verse here. Okay, this was the first one. Now, in terms of the verse we're looking at here, this is the one right here. Boom, boom. Okay. So, sweet fruit of many a merry bout, my funny toil is not all lost. Though you came to the world askew, which fools me laugh at. In my last penny, your share will be in it, the better half of it. Though I should be worse off. So basically, what he's saying, okay, is what he's saying is, uh, though you basically were born in a way which is not, you were born in a way which is not traditional, as in the marriage way. And so people, which he calls fools, meaning people who don't have understanding, ignorant people are going to laugh at you and they're going to try and make fun of you. But in my last plaque, thy parts be in it. In my any money that I have, in my last penny, I'm going to give you some. Yes, basically, it's going to say you will inherit from me any money that I have, and you'll inherit the better half. So I'm going to split all my money with you and give you the most of it, the best of it. Though though I should be the war bestead, thou's be as bra and beanly clad. Okay, though I should be worse off, you'll be as well dressed and comfortable, and your young years as well brought up with education as any child of wedlock's bed. So basically saying, even if I'm poor, even if I'm poor, you will be as beanly clad. So basically, you're gonna have nice clothes and you're gonna be dressed well. And when you're young, and as nicely bred with education, you're gonna be educated as any brat. So he's sort of taking a dig back at the other side. He's calling children that are born in marriages sort of brats. He's taking a dig back of the wedlock's bed, meaning that a child born out of marriage in thy station. So basically saying that you're going to be treated just as good as they are. I'm going to make sure I work hard and all that to make sure I provide for you. Excuse me. even if I'm poor, you still will have a nice life as much as I can. Just essentially laying out and illustrating, the love a father has for his child, especially his daughter, and how he gets motivated to work really hard to try and provide for them. It's a natural instinct, huh? What I have here, okay, what I have here is sort of a line from the Bible, which lays out like what I was saying before in terms of uh, the idea of sort of intimacy or being physical with another person outside of marriage being like a sin. Huh? And bear in mind again, if you look, some of these things you will recognize as crimes. Murder, like that's a crime. Yeah? It's not just something which is unethical or immoral. It's a crime, a big crime. So you can see that murder is put alongside these other things. Do you see? It's put alongside these other things, which means these are also uh, crimes. They're essentially crimes against God. You understand? Crimes against God. And like I said as well, in some cultures, at some points in time, these things would have been punished like crimes. Like you go to jail, you could be whipped, you could be beaten, you could even be killed. So it's just a good thing to keep in mind that um the shame and everything, um, it wasn't just sort of what you might call it, sort of cultural shame or community shame, but a lot of these things had physical consequences for engaging in them. You understand? Ethics were policed in a real way. Excuse me. Based on someone's interpretation of the text. Ethics were enforced, and often in a lethal way, unfortunately. Okay, it goes on to say, of which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time in the past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God, meaning that they're evil people, they're not good people, and so they won't go to heaven, basically. Yeah? They're not going to be favored by God. God won't like them, basically. That's the idea. Okay, good grant that thou may inherit thy mother's looks, which is interesting talking about God because he begins his next line with that good, which is another way of saying God grant that you may inherit your mother's looks and graceful merit, meaning graceful ways of behaving, her graceful character, her nature, her good nature, and your poor worthless father's spirit. So he's sort of putting himself down without his fallings. So I hope that you take my spirit on, but you don't take anything which is negative about me. You take all my good qualities and none of my bad ones. So please me more to see you air it than stock it, Malins. May God grant without his feelings, it will please more that you inherit it than stock properties. So basically, I hope you inherit my spirit and your mother's good qualities. I hope you inherit my good qualities and your mother's good qualities more than you would inherit sort of like property or big wealth or something. He's basically saying like he wants her to be a good person more than a person who has an excess of money or assets and things like that. Meaning he really cares about her. He cares about her as in terms of like wants her to be a good human being, more so than just sort of wealthy or something like that. Um, okay. He goes on to say, for if thou be what I would have thee, so if you become what I would have you become and take the advice that I'm going to give to you, I'll never regret my trouble with you. In other words, I'll never regret, the difficulty that I'm gonna have in terms of people making fun of me, people calling me bad names and calling me shameful and all that, and also the trouble that I'm gonna have trying to provide for you. I'll never regret any of those. The cost nor shame of it, like what I just said. But be a loving father to you and brag the name of it. So if you will become a good person, so he's just basically saying to his daughter that, excuse me, if you wanna repay me, and the only thing that I want from you is that you become a good person. So he's basically like a sincere father, sincere parent, just wants his kid to be a good person, and he's saying, if you're a good person, that's all I want from you, and I will love you completely, and I'm gonna brag about you. I'm gonna be so proud of you, and I'm gonna talk about you openly, even if these fools over here don't like it. If they're trying to make me feel ashamed. Now, in terms of the main themes in this text, okay, in terms of the main themes in this text, like I said, one is the idea of shame, or what you could call religious Puritanism. So Puritanism is just it's a sort of I guess it's like a sub branch of religion. It's like a type of thinking, if you want to. It's a better way to understand it. Is it's a type of thinking, which is basically the idea that the text should be taken literally, 100% literally, and that the sort of life itself should be lived in a way which is, yeah, more miserable than it needs to be, if I put it that way. So basically, it's like the text should be taken literally, and there is only one pure understanding, which is why it's called Puritanism. There's a pure understanding of the text of God, of how to be a good person, just one. And anyone that doesn't conform to this one way is a sinner, is shameful, is wrong, should be punished in different ways. Now, obviously, there's a catch in the logic, which isn't often identified, which is the people say that the text should be taken literally, but this is in fact impossible. Um, Essentially, any text has multiple interpretations within it. And so anytime someone says this is what the text means, whether this is talking about the Bible or talking about the Quran or any other scripture, what they are in fact saying is this is what some person says it means, essentially. And then people would say, well, you should go to the original understanding. Even then, you are saying that because you're not talking to those people directly. So even then, you're saying this is what people have told me the original understanding was. If that's not bad enough, you're still going ahead and saying these human beings understand exactly what God was saying. And they are smart enough to say this is what it is and how it should be. It don't make no sense, huh? So anyway, that's why Puritanism doesn't work. And essentially why it's always a sort of minority position. And the majority position is always a sort of mixture of people being people trying to live a good life while at the same time trying to be a good person. It's always like a mixture of these things, and it's always diverse. And why in different cultures you have different forms of the same traditions, religion, philosophy, and all that. The reason is because the people in different places, their own culture will feed into it, and their own understandings will help them to apply the text or the philosophy, whatever it is, in their circumstances. Anyway, so shame and Puritanism, okay, which is those ideas, like I said, they would have been the people pushing the idea of shame and, a child is evil. Another problem with Puritanism and these kind of stupid ways of thinking is you end up taking positions which don't make sense. Now you end up in sort of absurd positions, which if you examine logically, they fall apart. Like assuming a child is evil or believing a child is evil. It's stupid, huh? Um, okay, anyway, so shame obviously is another big one. Challenging the idea of what's shameful and what's not shameful in terms of kids being born outside of wedlock or having relationships outside of marriage, etc. Obviously, fatherly love is a big one. The whole poem is dedicated to his daughter, his unborn daughter. It actually reminds me of like a Tupac song. He's was that song something to my unborn child, letter to my unborn child. If I never see you, he's make that song. If I never see you, it's just to my unborn child. It reminds me maybe Tupac read this and then made his own song. I don't know. Anyway, so fatherly love is also, a huge one. So obviously he loves his daughter a lot, despite what other people might say, etc., etc. And then finally, you have the idea of rebellion or sort of enlightenment ethics. In other words, people sort of taking a stand against like Puritan thinking, against the thinking which is, you could say, sort of too strict. Or not even, it's not strict isn't even a good word. It's too restrictive. That's a better word. Too restrictive. Too too based on human tribalism. Too based on uh, irrationality, unreasonable thinking, illogical thinking, etc. Too based on also inequalities in power in terms of why do you believe this? Well, I believe this because this is what my religious leader said. and the religious leader believes this because this is what his religious leader said, like that. And the reality is sort of not identifying and not acknowledging the hypocrisy which happens with these people or with these sort of positions. Um, and also, fundamentally, the biggest flaw, not recognizing that every person is essentially just human and that no person has any divine authority or inbuilt innate authority. Um, these are just things that we come up with, and these are sort of ideas and titles and things which we come up with, certain among us come up with, especially to enable them to have power over other people so they can dictate how other people live for their own benefit or due to their own you know insecurities or negative qualities in one way or another. So essentially this poem represents Enlightenment thinking, which was all about taking the power away from these sort of, you know, ancient religious, you know, tyrants, if you like, and bringing it back to the ordinary person and the ordinary individual, recognizing that the individual is an individual who is equal to every other individual with inborn rights and value. Excuse me, that God is directly in a connection with each individual, and that there is no kings or queens who have any real authority, and that science and thinking, rationality, philosophy, spirituality, and you know, all of these things are important. And they are important, and as opposed to sort of, just trusting certain people who are in positions of power or so on. So anyway, so that's a poem. Basically, that's a poem. Now, okay, one question. So if you just came for understanding the poem, that would be that, I think. But one sort of philosophical question, I think that is natural from this poem should it actually, in fact, be shameful to have a child outside of marriage? Or is that in any way sort of ethically justified, um, to sort of push people towards marriage and away from, excuse me, being intimate or physical outside of marriage? I would say the answer is complicated. Excuse me. I'd say the answer is complicated in that I'd say for sure, first of all, that no child has any uh shame on them, or no child has any crime on them. Every child is born innocent. That's for sure. Yeah, that's a given. Um, so I don't believe in the idea of sins that the father pass on to the child. I think that's completely illogical. I don't think that makes sense at all. Um, so every child is born pure, essentially. Now in terms of the actual action itself, when you're thinking about ethics, you really have to ask yourself, sort of the fundamental question when it comes to ethics is who is harmed by this action. That's how you know if you want to judge something as being ethical or unethical, good or bad. You have to ask who is harmed, meaning damaged by this. Who's damaged by this action? So, because there's a real, you know what the real balance is in this question? The real balance is, should people be forced to marry someone that they do not want to marry? Okay. Versus, should people have the freedom to choose how they live and who they have relationships with? That's the real balance. That's the real balance. Because if you say that this is wrong, then there will be, as there was classically, historically, a large number of people, I'd say especially women, who will be softly forced, if not actually forced, to marry people that they have no interest in marrying. Um, so you have to think about that. It's the question of human freedom. Me personally, what I would say is I strongly believe in individual freedom and individual liberty over everything, because I don't believe that anyone has any inherent authority or divine authority to dictate to anyone else how they should live, at all. So I don't believe there's any logic that you can come up with which demonstrates any person is born with any authority to tell someone else how to live. Um, with the exception of if that person is actually damaging someone else. So for me, my position I would always favor and lean on the side of if the action doesn't actually damage, meaning really damage, not just that you don't like it, but actually damage someone, then I wouldn't say it was wrong. No, I wouldn't say it was wrong. Um, and I would put individual freedom and liberty over even the community, because I believe if you do it the other way, then that's how you get a tyranny. That's how you get dictatorship. Um, okay. Anyway, so I don't want to go too much more on this because this is not what the sort of lecture is about. But if you have any more questions on that, or if you want me to, make a video maybe dedicated just to that, I can. But anyway, we'll stop there, and uh, I'll see you soon.